Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakersecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
It's like climbing a mountain, and if you don't stop at the levels as you climb, you'll get higher and higher and realize, man, I still got to the top. And then you'll look back and you'll realize there's like all these plateaus that you didn't sit and experience, and the view is really great.
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. Right now, a real seismic shift is happening in the film industry. This is your best chance to join a new filmmaking movement. You have been called to create an everlasting impact with your unmatched, deep desire to tell authentic stories. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets podcast, episode number 71. And I have with me an award-winning cinematographer, Kris Kimlin. So Kris, go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and reveal the one filmmaker secret that you have been keeping from us.
First off, George, nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. I feel honored to be here and chatting with you. And besides, always pick the lime or lemon LaCroix. Don't ever go with the off flavors. The big secret for me has been really understanding my happiness and what success really looks like in not only in life but in this business, because this business so circumferences life in general, and it becomes a lifestyle. So really nailing down what it is that is going to make you happy. And if you're a creator, how you want to create and what you want to create and what the end result of that is. And knowing that sometimes, like the dream, right? Everybody's great to have a dream, and it's a really beautiful thing to chase after, but know that it's like climbing a mountain. And if you don't stop at the levels as you climb, you'll get higher and higher and realize, man, I still got to the top. And then you'll look back and you'll realize there's like all these plateaus that you didn't sit and experience, and the view is really great. You know,
that's a beautiful sentiment. That's a beautiful sentiment. I think I would love for you to expand upon the plateaus. Like, is it about celebrating your wins? Is it about being self-aware of the moments and the place that you're at during those plateaus? How do you deal with those sort of horizons that you reach in order to really be grounded within the successes or the failures that come along?
I think one, that's going to change throughout the journey, right? You're on a journey, and the journey is always going to be different, right? I went hiking this morning, and that same trail that I hike is a trail that I've hiked before. But the difference is that now it's fall, so there's leaves and there's hidden rocks along the way, whereas I could see them better in the summertime, right? It's cooler, which brings good and, it's uncomfortable. So much like that as the metaphor, I think that along the journey, there's going to be a bunch of different feelings that you're going to have, in your chase to be successful. What it looks like is, and what I've gone through, and here's a perfect example. I look back, and I made this movie a long time ago called Mom's Night Out. It was the first red carpet, like big red carpet. We had it at Chinese Theater in LA, and it was, the whole thing, right? Sony put it on. And I realized looking back that, my whole intention was to walk down the red carpet and to be noticed so that I could do that again. Right. And now I look back at that, and I, it's not a regret, I wouldn't say, because I had a great time. Don't get me wrong, but it was totally worth it. And it was amazing. But when I look back, I go, and I just didn't take in the experience for what it was. I thought it was like a marketing thing for me, and I got to get my name out. I walked down that red carpet, nobody talked to me because they didn't really care, right? Nobody cares the DPS, right? And so they're talking to actors. That's what that's there for. So if that's what you want to do, go become an actor. but I didn't really take in the experience the way that looking back, I wish that I could. I missed the plateau. I kept climbing, right? But there are other plateaus that I did retroactively see when I made the movie Woodlawn, a football movie years ago. That was a really tough job for me because I thought that was the film that was going to take me to the next level, right? I thought it was like the one, right? And it's a beautiful film, still my favorite movie I've ever shot in the end result. And I thought that this was the ticket, and it wasn't. And the movie failed, and it didn't do well at the box office. And I stopped after that plateau. I missed that. I should have just enjoyed the movie for what it was and the work that we created and the beauty of what that was, and really cherish the friendships and our brotherhood, myself and the directors. But we had a lot of tension on that movie for a myriad of reasons. But it was after, when I looked back and I paused and I said, man, I really learned something. I'm going to learn something from this. And I did. And I realized that I got to stop worrying if this is the thing that's going to make it or not, because I can't control that at the end of the day. I've gone through meetings where I'm meeting with agents, and when I made I Can Only Imagine, which, was the highest grossing indie movie of whenever we made it. And I remember it beat out Black Panther that weekend. And Black Panther had already had an amazing run. But we were like number 3 in the box office. I went in to an agent, and I'm agent hunting. And we sit down and we're talking, and I go, hey man, we're number 3 at the box office. And, look at me. I'm worth the investment. And he goes, what movie? And I'm like, I Can Only Imagine. It's number 3 at the box office. We beat out Black Panther. He was like, yeah, I never heard of it. And I was like, what? And then the meeting, ended a few minutes later, and we never spoke again. So, but all of that is just a reminder that, you can't control all of that stuff. But what you can't control is your happiness and your ability to take in what's happened and the work that you've done, and realize that, the thing that you've created is really special. And I'm like now more than ever realizing that that's really like the most important part of this journey, is just enjoying that and appreciating that. And so, yeah, the plateaus are going to be different throughout your life, throughout your career, and if you can recognize it, to stop and take it in and enjoy it. Because here's the thing, man, you're going to keep climbing it. And I've done that. And I like we talked about before, I turned 40 this year, and I realized, man, I'm just climbing the mountain still. There ain't no top, right? I don't even think, and I used to think, man, if I could just get on the bigger movie. And then I shot a $50 million movie, and it was just as difficult and just as it looked exactly the same as the $2 million movies. Mm-hmm. There was it didn't look the same in the equipment, but I'm talking about just on the whole, right? It's still the same system. And especially since the pandemic, right? It's just movies have changed. Movies have changed a lot. So find out what you want to create and be happy with that creation. And that, man, I watch a lot of YouTube, because I'm a creator by heart, and I watch these guys that are out there doing their thing. That's a special platform for those guys, right? Guys and gals. That's a special platform where they just get to create, and they're not beholden to investors and producers that are now trying to work the pandemic and what has happened in theaters and stuff like that. So sometimes that's what creating looks like. And sometimes creating looks like my buddy who travels the United States in his van, making incredible videos for Winnebago, and has an amazing family life. And that's what he does. And that's what creating looks like. And he started out in movies with us. He's smart. He went and did his own thing. And he's fully content in creating because he found something that he loves. And
it's all about
that's a special place to be.
The perspective, right? Everything that you just said makes me think of something my grandpa used to always tell me, and it's to always remind yourself to live in the here and now, and just repeat that to yourself, here and now, because you can't control the past. It's already happened.
No,
you can't predict the future. Just like you said, you can't control those things of what'll happen with your movie. You can be as prepared as possible, but things will always go wrong. You will have challenges to deal with. The only thing that you can control is the present moment, the now, and the place that you're at, the here. So that's something that I relate to a lot. So I appreciate you sharing. So Kris, take me back now. I'd like for you to tell me the story of that first initial spark where you kind of had that flame lit underneath you to let you know that you are meant to be a filmmaker. This is what you want to do. You want to tell stories.
I'm not trying to plug my Instagram, but there's literally a picture of it, which is really special. When I was in high school, look, I was a kid that I'm a Spielberg kid. Through and through. Love Spielberg movies, love movies in general. And man, couldn't get enough of them. And was an actor at the time, doing a lot of stage work in Greenville, South Carolina. They had like a little theater there, and this place called Warehouse Theater. And I was working a lot as an actor on the stage. I loved being on the stage. And so as an actor, I'm in high school, I hear, hey, there's this movie that's coming to town. It's called Finding Jack Kerouac. It's like this really indie, $700,000 budget indie that's shooting in town. And they are shooting at the Hyatt in Greenville, South Carolina. Which is like at the time, that was the hotel. Like it was built into, it was like a staple in Greenville, South Carolina. If anybody's listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about. All these beautiful, whatever. And so they're shooting there. So I convinced my buddy Brandon to drive me to the set. And this is like at the Beepers, I think. And Beepers, maybe like the first cell phone had hit type of thing where like people could afford to like have a cell phone on their person. I can't remember. But I got him somehow I think it was cell phone, because he ended up taking calls from the school for me. Instead of them calling my house, we got them to switch the phone number. Mm-hmm. We wrote like a letter, forged the signature, given to the school administration. They changed, that was the number. And they would call Brandon. Hi, is this the Kimlins? And it'd be like, yeah, I'm Mr. Kimlin. And they'd be like, your son didn't show up at school today. Oh, he's sick. So for like 2 weeks. And I would go, and I snuck onto this film set. And by sneak, I mean, I didn't have to get past guards or anything like that. It was such a cheap movie. I walked into the staging area, kind of the green room for the actors, and everybody's in there. Their, wardrobe, hair, everything. There were no trailers. And so I just went in there and I started reading lines with actors and became a PA. And for 2 weeks, I basically worked as a PA.
Just so you know, filmmakers, that is not something that you could do presently on a film set. No. Just walk on and start reading lines with the actors. It's
so different. And there's something so beautiful about that opportunity that's a very good point. They're so locked down now, especially since COVID. So I do this, and then the producer, his name is John Sexton. He's still a producer. He's out of North Carolina, Wilmington. He walks up to me and he goes, am I paying you to be here? And I said, no, sir. And he was like, do I have to pay you to be here? And I said, absolutely not. He goes, great, you're hired. And so I stayed on for 3 weeks until we were shooting at a bar on a Friday night, and it went late. They moved into splits, and where you shoot in you come in later in the day and go in the night. And I had to call my mom because Brandon wasn't going to pick me up. And it's the end of the week, Friday, Fridays. And so the next thing I know, I'm calling my mom like, hey, can you come pick me up at Tiki Bob's, which is the name of the bar? And she's like, what? Why are you at a bar? I'm like, no, I'm making a movie. We're making a movie? What are you talking about? And so I got in so much trouble. And then I let them be, I told the extras casting, I was like, can my parents be in the movie? That'd go over really good if they're like extras. So they ended up being extras in the movie, which is amazing, hilarious. So all that to say, that night, he's actually like a big time key grip on like Marvel movies, but the DP said, hey man, you ever looked in the camera before? And I said, no, sir. And he was like, you should come over here and take a look, and you can operate it and have fun with it. And it was like an old Arri 416 shooting 16 millimeter for this movie. And I looked through the eyepiece and I saw the world different than I had ever seen the world before. And that was the moment. I was like, what is this thing that I'm seeing? What is this box that I'm looking into? And how is this going to end up on a screen somewhere? And that blew my mind, just blew my mind. And I knew that's somehow I wanted to be involved on that side of things. because the perspective was completely different. And I was like, these people are solving problems. These people are creating. And that was like mesmerizing to me. So at that time, somebody snapped a picture of it. And the cool part about it is that they snapped a picture and I found the picture and it's sitting on my Instagram. It's me looking in the camera the very first time I'd ever looked through a cinema camera. And that's
amazing. That's a great story. Yeah. And honestly, feel free to plug your Instagram. I'll make sure to have all these links in the show notes.
I think it's just at Kris Kimlin, like just my name. Yeah.
Perfect. You know, that's something that I like about hearing stories from filmmakers is that everybody kind of takes a different path. There's no story that's, going to be the same from filmmaker to filmmaker. What have you found to be sort of the catalyst for you truly taking on the identity of a cinematographer, whether that be with how you started with, shooting sports to then doing some short films and then getting into narrative? What's the catalyst? What is it about creating and crafting that image that gives you that drive to continue to, chase after the next project and really tell the stories that you truly care about?
I never knew what I wanted to be right away. After that moment, I knew, and I just figured it was acting. So I went on to be an extra in movies and work on some other films, but I was just an extra. And I never really went down the acting route, but I worked at a radio station. I did a morning show. And then I went to college, and then at college I met John Irwin, who I ended up working with, still do. Mm-hmm. And we became really close friends, and he had his brother Andy, and they are their own brothers, and we've made movies together. But when we started, it started out of just sheer what's out there, what can we create, and that always starts with weddings. So that's where we launched into. But we always had this dream to tell stories, and I didn't know really what a director did, but early on I wanted to direct. I just didn't know that. But the problem is when you meet two people in college and you go work for them, they're the directors, you're not going to compete against that. Right. And so you find your avenue, and that looks like a lot of things. I've been an AD, I've done sound, I've done art, I've done every single aspect, every job in order to get to where, but something that always remained consistent was, you're right, I worked in television, live television. The way I paid the bills was I would shoot high school football games. And then that led to really small college games. And then that was the same thing that Andy was doing. John's brother was shooting sports. John did dabble in it a bit as well. But yeah, so we would shoot sports to pay the bills so I could pay rent. And when that led to, there was a camera operator that I was pulling cable for, his triax cable on the sideline. And he got hit in a football game and he had to leave the field. And he looked at me and he goes, just pick up the camera and shoot. You may never get on air, but just at least go ahead and shoot. And so I just picked it up and I put on the headset, and it was the director. And I had done a little shooting already for high school, but so I knew what I was doing somewhat. Yeah. And so I just got that experience. And really, it was just the luck of the draw, because that happened right around Katrina. And when Katrina hit, a lot of the camera operators in the Southeast couldn't make certain jobs, right? So I got this call from ESPN, and they were like, hey, we heard you're a camera operator. Would you be available to go to California tomorrow? I was like, yeah, count me in. And then they were like, here's the rate. And I was like, that's way more than I've ever made before. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And that year, that was my first big college football season. And it was booked every week. And I was on a plane traveling. And then that turned into the next year, that turned into basketball season. Basketball season turned into baseball. And then I was working kind of year round with sports. But when I wasn't shooting the games on the weekends, I'd be doing commercials and things like that. And we would be, we had left the weddings at this point. We were doing music videos and stuff like that and trying to fit everything in the schedule. It was wild because you're trying to really do two separate careers that look similar, but they're not the same. And just until the filmmaking side beat out the other one, I had ended up being a Steadicam operator for College Game Day. I did like the whole 3D thing when it was big. I did all that live television 3D work, which was wild. There's a great James Cameron story in there at one point. It's a long one, but would have to talk about it another time.
Totally.
But yeah,
I'm intrigued now.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good. So yeah, I did all that stuff, but then finally the filmmaking took over, and I loved creating from that side. And it wasn't really until I was gaffing for John, who was the DP and the director. And so I'm doing this music video, and the key grip that I'm working with, this older guy, he goes, "Hey man, why do you call yourself the gaffer? You're picking the lenses, you're operating the camera, and you're lighting. That sounds like a DP to me." And I was like, gaffer, DP, it doesn't matter, John. I don't care, And he was like, there's like a substantial pay bump with that. And I was like, nah. He was like, yeah, you should be the DP from now on. And almost exactly like that, even a little more monotone.
So nonchalant, yeah.
Yeah. And so I just walked up to John. I go, from now on, I'm the DP. And John was like, all right, cool. And I go, and you got to pay me more. And he was like, how much? I was like, I don't know yet, but I'm going to let you know when I find out. And so that's really where the logistics came from. And then after that, it was like, I just invested and I went and learned. And I learned from other DPs. This guy named Bob Scott taught me so much, even though our styles are completely different. He taught me the business. He taught me about having like a bedside manner as a DP. I went and did so much research. I am not a guy who is trained as a DP or a camera operator. I wasn't trained in lighting. Just figured it out. And it was a lot of years of figuring it out. So much so that like that 10,000 hour rule that they write about is a real thing. And I remember when I hit 10,000 hours, when it became like simple in the sense of like the problem solving became simple. Like it was like, oh, I know how to do this. I'm here. And that became, I don't even tell people when that happened because it's shockingly late in my career. And I was like, this is where the real 10,000 hours just clicked. So it's always funny when somebody's like, there's some DPs that I know that are pretty young, haven't been doing it long. And they're like, I'm ready. And I'm like, ooh, it's going to shock you when you're really ready. And that readiness comes from, there's a great quote, I think that David Fincher said. He said, if you want to find out how to direct, cram 10 shots into 3 with 10 minutes left before the sun goes away. And that's directing. And that is the most real statement about filmmaking you can make. And that's when that's when I realized I was a cinematographer, was when I was able to figure it out in that moment and be able to go, let's do this, and this will give us the story we need, and it will tell it visually. And then I was like, oh man, this is so late in my career.
Although mic drop, I mean, that's it doesn't matter in terms of timeline, I don't think, of when you feel like you reach the point where you have the skill set and the tools that you need in order to become that problem solver, like you said, because the value that you bring to a film set is how big of a problem you can solve.
Yeah.
No matter what department you're working in, even if you're the PA, if you can solve the problems, if you're the go-to guy or gal that has everything in their pocket that is ever needed at any point in time, you are solving big problems and you're going to be valued that much more.
I went to an event last night where somebody said, yeah, this is all about just storytelling, just telling great stories. And I go, that's okay. That's true. All right. That's true. I said, but that is not the price of admission. Like the price of admission is you got to want to solve problems. Everybody wants to tell a great story. That's the most simple soundbite ever. But the truth is we're storytellers. Everybody's got a story to tell. But are you a problem solver? Because you can go tell stories by putting them in books. You can go tell. There's CEOs that tell stories, right? They create entire businesses off telling stories. Are you a problem solver? If you're a problem solver, then you're a filmmaker, in my opinion. You just have to learn the logistical aspect, like how to light. I don't need somebody to tell me how to light. I went and figured that out. I don't need somebody to tell me how to operate a camera. I went and figured it out through initiative and going and doing it. But if I'm not a problem solver, I don't care how talented an eye you've got. Doesn't matter. If you can't solve problems when they're put in front of you, and that's not what you want to do, this ain't the avenue to take.
Yeah, the sort of technical aspect of filmmaking I see is the reps, right? The repetition of just doing the work
100%.
and practicing. And then the problem solving piece is actually having that strategy of the why. Like, why are we going to use the backlight without the key light? Or why are we going to be using this specific composition? What does that do to the story? And really getting in deep with those. Now, every project is going to be different. As I'm sure you know, Kris, anytime you approach a project that's going to, involve different kinds of problems, what's your process in terms of the sort of initial stage of getting the project launched into pre-production? Kind of get into the nitty gritty. I'm always curious to know, directors, cinematographers, sound people, what their process is in terms of launching into a project and getting all of those logistical things out of the way, but really turning on the creative mind of, paving the path towards production.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, is kind of like process, because I always glean a little bit from other people's processes and try to sprinkle that in. My first and foremost is, like, I'm a writer at heart. I write a lot, and I have a bunch of screenplays I've written, and I think that's the directorial side of me. And I love that aspect. And it all starts with the creative and the script. And what I've learned is I spent a lot of my early on career trying to manage bad scripts and go, oh, I can change this. I can affect this with my cinematography. And it's just, that's not true. When it's bad, it's bad. And you just need to know, and I encourage every cinematographer, and there's no exception to this, to go understand story structure and go understand character, and then go take some acting courses, right? Because you need to understand, one, the story that you're telling, and is it structurally there? Are the characters good? And then also understand where you're breaking the rules in the story. Because if you start shooting a movie that breaks a bunch of rules and they haven't set it up right, it's just going to be a bad film. And then you're going to get frustrated because you're like, why aren't these movies successful? And I did so much of that work and again, I get it, pay the bills and stuff like that. But at some point you got to take a risk. And it took me so long to take a risk because I just thought, oh man, I got to keep working. And I cranked out some stinkers. And you can't change that with your cinematography. Second of all is, it's all relationship. This business is all relationship. Every aspect of it, right? If you don't have a great relationship with your director and you're not his best friend or her best friend, you are going to struggle. And if you don't realize that you're there to serve them, like, that's your job as a DP, is to serve the director. And there's so many of us that I think there's this weird, almost like this, and I don't know if it's deacons or like the popularity of DPs in our circle has become like almost like the celebrity DP, and who can attain that, who's got the most followers, who's, done this, that, or the other, who's got a podcast where they talk about, or have been on a bunch of podcasts, and it's all just crap. And I think that mentality sometimes takes over, and then you think that that you're more important than the director. And when the more important that you think you are, and the less service that you're doing in service to the director who's telling the story, really is going to create a lot of problems. And I know a lot of folks that have come out the backside of that going, I don't understand why our relationship was so scorned. And it's like, well, I mean, I hope that you're looking at yourself first, because that was my big problem. I spent so many years thinking, oh, I need to be the guy. I need to be the one that is, I need to be the celebrity DP. I need to do this, that, and the other. And I took such just so much selfishness when you look back. But I just took on so much of I need to post this. I need to be the guy. Just got to be the guy. That's it. And, so if you're not in service to the director, man, maybe you should be a director, but learn the story and know that you're in the service of the director. And then the work, it really comes down to the work. Somebody asked me what my schedule is on a movie. My schedule, and this is where it becomes difficult for me to be a cinematographer on features, because I'm kind of the worst version of myself. And that version is I subject everybody to not get a hold of me. My friendship, man, this one hurt. My buddy, my best friend, Adam, said to me, not to me, he said it in a group. He goes, "Oh, when Kimlin's doing a movie, like, I just know that I'm not going to hear from him for like 4 months, 5 months."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "What do you mean by that?" He was like, "Well, you're not going to call." I go, "I call you, and half the time you don't pick up. But that's okay. Like, I know I'm going to lose you to the movie." And my wife said it. And I was like, "Oh, God, I am the worst. I really am." And the reason why is the job, if the call time's 9, you're up at 5 and you're reading the script before you go to work. Now, I'm sure there's savants and I'm sure there's people that handle themselves way better than I am with the schedule. This is what I have to do to be successful, right? So up at 5, on set by 9, wrap at 10, trying to like come down from that. And then you're trying to figure out the next portion of the day. So that's, it's a couple hours to unwind. And what's crazy is I used to go out to eat and go to a bar and go hang out with the crew. And I'm like, what was I doing? Like, I need to like process, you got to calm down, you got to eat dinner. And then you try to get like all of life that was happening that day that you didn't pay attention to, try to figure that out in 30 minutes. And then also having a conversation with your wife if she's not there or your family. And then all of a sudden you find out it's like 1 a.m. and you're like, man, I just need to look at the schedule. So then you're looking over the call sheet and that's another 30 minutes, just trying to figure out what the scenes are. And then you're up at 5 doing it again. That's my schedule, right? And that's my schedule during prep. So people that tell me that they go into prep and they're like, yeah, I just, show up at 9 and off at 5 and, get to know the art department and we go out and have a drink and, this, that, and the other. And my weekends are off. What? No. I mean, I'm up at 5 again because what do I need to do? I need to go see a location. What does it look like at sunrise? Because I'm not going to walk onto the set and not know, right? I need to see sunsets at sunset. I need to see sunsets at different locations, right? So that's way late in the day. And in between, my job is to spend as much of my time with the director as possible, right? So I get to know them and the story that we're trying to tell, right? And that takes all day. Then when he's done or she's done, I'm going to meet with all the other departments and trying to give them knowledge that I've earned from the director. And then on top of that, I want to watch movies with the director. And productions don't pay me 3 months in advance to go, rent a house with a theater so we can watch movies and figure that out. So prep looks like that. And I'm still finishing at midnight and nobody's heard from me. Right.
And so you're not even into production, and it's not even so production. All encompassing because your mind is constantly churning those ideas. You're almost having to be turned on with the aspect of that story, that film, those visuals 24/7 because you're probably dreaming about it. You're probably thinking about it. It's the first thing when you wake up at 5 a.m., immediately you need to turn on your brain and be able to be ready for any questions that arise, any problems that you need to start thinking about solutions for. Okay. So,
and that's if you're prepared. Like,
exactly.
So then, then that's like, if everything went according to plan, then forget all the hiccups that happen 1,000,000 times a day and all the monkey wrenches that are being tossed into the spokes. And that's every single day, every day, and then not to mention the day where they decided to go, let's go at 15, 16 hours today to shoot. And then you're wrapping even later, and then your sleep schedule's done. I mean, it's wild. It's a wild thing. And that harkens back to what we talked about very first. You're climbing up the hill, climbing up the mountain, and it's a continuous mountain, right? Are you prepared for that? And sometimes you just go, I don't know. Or at least you need to hear this, right? You need to hear this and know that this is the work. This is the job. And that gets into a much deeper conversation about how I think actually DPs should be compensated on back end. You're working as much as the director. And if you're not, I don't know how you do the job. That's the only way I can do the job. And again, there are much more talented people out there than me, right? A million more DPs that are more talented than I am. They're not going to work harder than me. I promise you that. I'll give them a run for their money. But they may be brilliant and figure this stuff out. But like I said to you at the beginning when we were just talking, I don't know a DP that has a great relationship with his wife in features that like does the back-to-back type of thing, right? A lot of them have like investment in cameras and stuff like that, or they have other other things that they do on the side. But I don't know a lot of them have great relationships with their families. And that's why, because that is literally the schedule. Yeah.
You have to keep it under control somehow. And maybe sometime in the near future, there will be some, adjustments with the recent pandemic. A lot of shift has been happening within the industry. There's been a lot of talk about the hours, the long hours. So hopefully something will come to a head and it becomes an industry that is not so glamorized, but then once you actually get on set, you understand how difficult it actually is and how much of your life gets absorbed by it. Hopefully,
the majority of this business is very blue collar, and that's not the people that are seen.
Right.
People knew that, and that's why it's important for me to educate at a young level. We're trying to start a program here in Birmingham, where I live, to educate young people at the high school level to understand that this is a trade. This is like that's what I love about Mike Rowe and his Dirty Jobs and that mentality of like, this is a trade. This is blue collar. You're out working with your hands. Those are the people that actually make movies. And that's something that I got to see in high school, was the guys actually lifting the stuff, right? Like the art department working hours and hours, being able to create amazing art. But man, that's physical stuff. Like when you go into a house on a movie and it's all that stuff for the movie didn't exist in that person's house. Somebody came and moved all of their stuff out, took pictures of it, and they're going to move it all back into the exact same place. And that's like that type of work. That's some back-breaking stuff. But we only see the actors who, by the way, have their own journey, and it's incredibly tough. And you don't see the millions and millions of actors that don't ever get in front of the camera the way that some really talented people should. They're on their own journey. So I'm not saying it's always like, the actors, they don't do anything. No, they do a lot, and they suffer a lot too. But man, and we suffer for the art because I don't want anybody to walk away and go, this guy is so jaded that he hates. I love creating. I love creating so much. But man, it's a blue collar job, and you're working with your hands and you're using your brain. And granted, sometimes you get to a position like DP and you don't work with your hands as much, but you're exhausting the brain, man. You're exhausting the brain and the emotions and everything. And you're still, it's still blue collar from that aspect in the hours. It's not glitz and glamour,
Yeah, I don't think you're jaded. I think you're seeing opportunities for improvement. And I appreciate you mentioning the sort of nonprofit work that you want to do. Let's get into that, because I think seeing those opportunities for improvement is a best way to have a perspective on the sort of upcoming generation of people and future filmmakers that will really shape this industry, because we have no choice but to leave it to them. So why not leave it in the best, position possible? So what is it that you're doing? Give us a quick overview. Well,
I'm a huge Alabama fan, huge Nick Saban fan. I love the guy. I've had the privilege of shooting with him a bunch because I live here. And I started thinking about, why are those programs so successful, right? Because I don't see a big difference between football players, baseball players. Like those are like dream goals, right? When you were a kid, what's like the bucket? I want to play football. I want to be a professional baseball player. Not too far from that is, I want to be an actor. I want to work in movies, or I want to go to the moon, right? Some of us will never get to the moon. Me, Elon Musk, great for him. I was the kid that wanted to be in movies. I watched E.T. and that movie changed my life. I was like, there's something about that I want to do. And so these are dreams that can become realities, much more so, in my opinion, than becoming a football player, baseball player. But what do we look to, right? Well, coaches and systems, right? Our system, in my opinion, is flawed, extremely flawed as the entry, right? You go in, you work for free, you get beat up a bunch. And if you can survive the hours and being mistreated, then you get the golden ticket to pass, right? Now, there's a lot to that, right? I went through that, right? I worked for free. I got beat up. I had like the hardest gaffer that would take 4/0 cable that's super heavy. And if I didn't wrap it perfectly, would throw it off the truck, and I'd have to rewrap everything while everybody else left. So I've been through the hazing portion. But the point is that, they go to film school. They don't get taught anything about the blue collar mentality. They come out of film school and there's a dream, right? For a guy or a gal that lives in Birmingham, Alabama, there's a dream that they don't even know could be realized. But then they go to college and they see, oh man, there are people that do this. I need to go to LA or New York or Atlanta or Chicago, Miami, what have you. Well, we missed the opportunity to show them the dream locally. And now what's going to happen is those people aren't going to come back to Birmingham to work. Subsequently, the Birmingham contingent of filmmaking, nobody wants to bring a film to Birmingham, for instance, and this is a lot of smaller jobs, because there's no crew base. Now, I can't convince a 25-year-old kid in LA to move back to Birmingham because he's working in LA. But what I can do is train up a 16-year-old kid that's going to be here for the next few years of his life and maybe in college as well, to show him, hey, there's a dream here, right? And that dream can be realized. Not only that, let's get you hands-on learning some of this stuff. Then you can decide if that's something that you want to do. Also, I'm going to teach you how to be a good person, right? Because this business is so predicated off of some really wickedly bad people in very powerful positions. And the only way to change that is to change the person. And the only way to do that is stop hazing people and stop creating a mentality of like, if you don't do what I say type of thing, but actually love on them a bit and then teach them like the craft, then guess what? There's going to be a crew base internally. People are going to want to bring movies to a place like Birmingham. And then subsequently, as a turn, the kid's not going to go to LA. And he's not going to have to, pay $3,000 a month to live in a shoddy apartment in Hollywood. He gets to stay home around his family and learn how to be a good person with the people that he's been raised by and the people that he knows, right? And can still realize the dream and effectively do the dream, which is what these college programs are doing. They're going and getting these kids very, very young, teaching them up. They're going through these camps. So why don't we take that system? They start them so young. And then the focus is, how can we make you a better person? Because what we want you to do is be successful to give back to the college, right? So the small town here, Birmingham, is the college. Why are we not doing camps? Why are we not reaching out to the youth and let them know that the dream that they see can be realized and can be accomplished, which is an incredible thing. And I think we've just, I think a lot of people are like, oh man, we got beat up so bad. I don't want to put that on those kids. Well, just change the culture of the people, right? And then it'll change the industry. And, if I can affect a little bit of change, maybe somebody else will pick that up. Someone smarter, more powerful than I am, more, knows more people, whatever, can turn around and take that and run with it and do it on a much bigger level. Maybe. Or maybe we just affect this market and it becomes a great market with great people. And I'm okay with that because I'd rather stay here and work with a bunch of great people. But I think you can do that more. You just have to start like early. You just have to change people early on and give them an opportunity and let them know like the dream is not so far off. It's a lot closer than you think it is. Just got to learn some stuff. And naturally people get weeded out because they don't want to apply or want to put in the hard work. And that's still going to exist. There's no easy road. There never will be. There never will be.
That's beautiful. I think the notion that you are kind of catering, for these students to not only learn the skills, the reps, but also be able to understand what it is when they constantly hear that this industry is built on relationships. The famous quote of, it's who you know. Yep. But when you actually get down deep into what that actually means, it is about nurturing relationships, seeking out relationships that you can benefit from, but also give value back to those people. And that's truly how you can build up the right kind of relationships in this industry to get yourself to the place that you want to go, but still maintain that self-awareness that you are doing what makes you happy. So do what makes you happy. And eventually with those reps, with those skills, with those problem solving tools that you have on your tool belt, you will be able to actually progress forward and realize those plateaus that you reach.
Nothing would make me happier to know that somebody went through a program like that, right? Like the let's say a program takes off and somebody comes out of that and they become a YouTube creator because of what they learned, and they add cinema value to what they're doing, right? Because they're creating. I spent so much time poo-pooing on the idea of like, the YouTube creators or the social creators and stuff like that. And then I shot a film for a guy named JB Costa, he did all the impression. He did Robin Williams impression years ago after Robin died, and it really took off. He's big on Vine. We did a short film together, and I realized these people just want to create, and they're like I'm sleeping on couches and having the best time of my life. We're driving from LA to Utah to shoot in a place that looked like another planet, and we had a blast, and we had nothing to do it with, but it's still some of my favorite work that we ever did, because those people at the core of who they are, they just want to create. And that's a beautiful thing, right? Forget all the processes and all the things that always just those are meant to keep you from creating, right? And if you can sift past those and get to the core heart of storytelling and creating something special, man, if you can do that, whatever it is, it's like my buddy with the Winnebago. Like that to me is like a beautiful thing. Just goes out, shoots around the United States, national parks in a Winnebago, and for Winnebago. Right? It's
almost nostalgic thinking about that, of like just getting back to the basics, getting back to the simplicity.
That's what it started as. That's what Spielberg started as that. Like we all start that way. So let's just do a little bit more of that and a little less of like, how do we play the system? How do we, the streamer system, the theater system, forget the guys on YouTube. They're not making us money and blah. Who cares? Just go create. Do something genuine from the heart. That's like, because you're going to get to a point in your life, and it's very hard to see at 20, right? You're going to get to a point in your life where you look back and you go, what did I really create? What lasting thing did I leave for the people behind me, right? And I spent 20 years, and I look back and I go, I've made some really meaningful movies that changed some lives. I've been involved with some great stuff. I did this thing called Tomorrow's Filmmaker, where I was able to teach a course for a friend of mine. And I get messages every single week from all over the world of people like, we love this course that you did. Thank you so much. And that's very humbling, because you realize how much of a reach, right? So I've done something, but then there's a lot of stuff I look back on and I go, I didn't really affect anything. I didn't, that was me trying to make more money. That was me trying to get more status, me trying to do this, me trying to do that. And once you start, 40's been weird, man. It's been good, but it's been weird.
Well, let's keep with that theme. I think I really love where this is going, and kind of the points that we're touching on. The idea of perfectionism is something that I think plagues a lot of creators and filmmakers, and getting to some elusive point at which, whether it's you're writing a script, whether you're shooting the movie, whether you're editing, is getting to that ideal state for your story. How do you, and perhaps you can give a specific example, maybe on American Underdog or any of the previous films, where you have been faced with that idea of, this isn't perfect. How do I get it to perfection? Oh, wait, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be what it is. Is there a particular example that you can think of?
Well, first off, I'll start off by saying there's this incredible quote that I don't know who says it, and so I should know this, but they said if a film is never finished, it's only abandoned, right? And which is so true, right? You're never gonna get here's the sorry.
No worries. You are good.
Yeah, call me. They should all know my schedule. A film is never finished, it's only abandoned. I think it's all part of creativity, right? It's I'm trying to think of a specific example, but the point I'm making is that the special moments come through. It goes back to that Fincher moment where he said, if you want to really know what true directing is, figure it out in 3 shots instead of 10 with 10 minutes left with sunlight, right? That's true directing. That's the way it is for cinematography. That's the way it is for filmmaking in general. And I think that those are the perfect moments. And those perfect moments are found when you don't see them coming, because they're genuine and you're really getting to, all you have is the story. All you have is your problem solving, right? And that usually is where, we so work at trying to create these moments. I'll give you an example. On Underdog, when we were scouting, we had this we had this massive, it was like a rodeo arena that we turned into the indoor football complex where they would do the arena football. And we had everything planned because, everything, and we're sticklers for planning. And the reason that you plan is so that on the day when it doesn't work, you have that backup, right? And so you have the ultimate freedom, like that's ultimate creation, right? When you plan to the point of where then you can freely think on the day because you've got the problem solved. Now let's start adding all the, let's just live in the moment. And, so the perfect version of it was what we had set up. The Barnstormers, when is the team that Kurt Warner played for, and they were going to come out this end of the tunnel, let's say the west end, right? Well, if you looked at the east end, we hadn't really gone far enough on our scout to go investigate that. We just kind of went in with the plan. Okay, this is perfect. So John and I, on the one of the last days of scouting, we go and we're just like, everybody's doing their chit chat. And I hate scouts, but I love individually scouting and scouting with my team, but I hate like the big tech scout, right? Because it's more questions for like, where are we going to park the trucks? And, where's the generator going? So John and I, he's like a gerbil, man. He's just all over the place. And so he's like, hey, let's just go take a look at the place. And so we go walking around. Now, granted, the whole entire crew is over planning out everything that we've discussed. We go walking around the backside and we find out that on the backside of the arena is this massive garage door. And we asked this guy to open it. He opens it up and it's stable after stable. Like I'm talking hundreds of stables for cows and horses. And there's like a rodeo stall in there. And we're like, this is wild. And I look at it and I'm like, dude, this could be magical. Could you imagine coming out of like where the Barnstormers practice? Kurt finds out the Barnstormers practice at this like podunk field in the middle of nowhere. And the very next cut, we cut to this arena and it's Kurt walking out and he's trying to talk to Hudnut going, what is this? And John's like, this is great. And he goes, and then John's like, and then they walk right into the arena. So we go from like these horse stalls directly into where they do football, right? And we're like, this is incredible. And I'm telling the guy, I'm like, can we get farm animals like brought in for this? And the guy's like, man, if you want a cow, I got tons of steer. And so this is wild, right? And so we have to go back and tell the entire crew, hey, we know that we just sat and planned all of this out and this was perfect. That is way better. And it was in the moment, and being open to that moment and being open to being wrong, right, is really, really what it's about, right? It's just open. Like we said earlier, I think before we started, that quote rings true about, you learn nothing from your successes after 30, only your failures. But if you can grab your failures and not even failures, but just say, man, I'm wrong. Like I'm wrong. That's way better. And a lot of times that will come from somebody else, right? That will come from somebody else pointing it out, right? And being okay with being wrong. We were wrong. That was the perfect way to do it. And if you watch the movie, that transition is my favorite transition we've ever shot. Comes off the field and it starts with a steer. It starts with this cow and this farmer. And you're like, what is this? Why is this? And then Kurt comes walking around and he's like, what's going on? And Hudnut's like, man, they do rodeos in there. And Kurt's like, well, where do they play football? They play football in here. And then it just opens up and then they run out and it's a rush. And it's my favorite transition we've ever shot in a movie. Right. And where did that come from? From being wrong and being open to going, let's just flip the world. And the crew was so great. But once they walked over there, everybody was like, this is wild. Why is there a rodeo attached to this arena? And that was really special. And it really comes off on the screen. It's funny and it's a great transition, like you said. But the thing I take away from it is just, it's like this magical moment where we were wrong and we were okay with it. And it wasn't perfect and it was messy and it didn't help anybody, but it was filmmaking at its core. And we created a moment, and that moment's really special.
That's a great story. Yeah, I remember that moment in the film, and I love it too. I think that also goes back to the idea we talked about with how you mentioned being best friends with the director, because I think that open line of communication and keeping an open mind throughout the whole process is so important, because it allows room for discoveries. Yeah. And I think that story is such a perfect example of a discovery that wasn't meant to happen. It just happened to be that you guys were comfortable with each other to walk off to the side and
we were being
notice
children.
This thing.
We were being children. We were being children. Like, we're bored with being with the adults. Let's go walk. Let's go have fun. Let's go find something. And that's literally what happened. And we were giggling when the guy opened the door, and it's literally a rodeo stall, like just like little children. And, now I'm talking through it. I just think of, man, that's the purest form of filmmaking, isn't it? Like you're just kids. You're back to just being kids and having fun. It was like backyard football, man.
You found a cool location and just, let's go do it.
Just go do it. And I just remember the production designer, who she was unbelievable. Just one of the sweetest people in the world. We were like, so we know that you've literally, she had set up the whole entire entrance already, because we had already pre-planned it. Is there any way that we could possibly move the entire world that you built from here all the way over there? And she was just like, I just remember her going, oh, absolutely, we can. Yeah. And it was it was beautiful. It was awesome.
That's great. Now, that's sort of the positive side of filmmaking, the times when things go right. But on any project, whatever it is, commercial, music video, feature film, short film, there will always be days or day when everything just seems to be going wrong, and you seem to be, everything seems that it's out of your control. Can you think of a moment where you felt like the world is coming down on your film set, and you have all these challenges that you're faced with, and how did you overcome those?
What's so funny is that I hope crew people that have been with me hear this and know about the story where the director tried to punch me in the face, but we won't go into that one. But they're going to laugh. They're going to be like, I know what he's talking. I do. There's a million versions of that, of when it doesn't go right. But I tend to not focus on those. I only focus on it's funny you say that. One of my favorite quotes ever came from an AC that worked with Chris Nolan. And, it's the AC that he made the shirt that has the color bars on it. And it's like a popular shirt, I guess, with industry people or whatever. Some ACs have it, right? It's got color bars. And, the reason why that happened was he boarded a boat and forgot to bring the color chart. And what AC brings a color chart everywhere they go? None. Like nobody. And Nolan was so in control of all that IMAX stuff. He goes, "Where's the color chart?" And he goes, "Oh, well, it's back on land." And they're out on the boat. And this is when they're doing Dunkirk. And he goes, "Well, you know what you have to do." And he stood up and he shouted out, what he'd done wrong. And Nolan has this strange military background, I guess. And he goes, "We shout our failures and keep our successes to ourselves." I'm the opposite. I kind of forget the failures, but it's an interesting, I'm sorry, I didn't mean a rabbit trail, but that just hit. And I'm like, wow, maybe I should remember those moments a little bit more. And they're not fresh on my mind, but I could say okay, no, on Underdog, let's use Underdog. There is one. There's specifically one. So I was shooting another movie when the initial scouting started for American Underdog. And I was shooting a movie called Unbreakable Boy, which is yet to come out, which is unfortunate because it's an incredible, incredible movie. So they had an initial scout where the directors went, and the home that Kurt's wife in the movie, Kurt and can't remember her name.
I can't either.
Brenda. The house that Brenda lives in, her parents' house, the actor that we used, the young boy he was actually blind. Right. And, so I go on the scout when I first come off the other movie, and it was just a timing thing. Right. They had already found the house, and our production designer, that poor woman, she was so amazing. They had picked the house, and she had already started the plans. And I come walking in, and I realize that this house is just not going to work. It's just not going to work. And I feel terrible because I realize how much has gone into, they already struck a deal with the people to that. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, this ain't going to work. And I could tell that she's trying to sell it from every angle, and she could just see my face. I'm just like trying to go through it. And so I pull John and Andy aside and I go, guys, this house is going to be very difficult to light. And it was very kind of, just not the greatest. And the ceilings were low and stuff like that. So this is going to be a tough one. And they supported me. And they said, okay. We had the whole crew leave. Like, this is on our tech scout, by the way. The whole crew leaves. And I'm just sitting in there, and I look at her and I go, and it's a little later in the schedule to shoot. And I just said, I'm so sorry. This house is just not it. And it was not working. And it was bad. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, I don't have time for this. And so I said, well, can we just look at some other options that are around? So we went and looked, and there's this house that we walk into, and I dismissed the crew again. And for an hour, we just kind of sat in there, because that's the way I like to scout. It's a little, some people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just have to feel the area for a while. So we're just sitting in there, and there's like this organ in the corner. That organ is the same organ my grandparents had. And I used to play with it when I was a kid. And I just go, and my grandparents had that same organ. And she goes, my grandparents had that same organ.
Oh, I just got chills.
And I go, and I just start telling the story. And then that led to like, and what if in the scene, like, this is the room where this happens? And then I go around the corner and I go, well, and what if we frame it like this? And she starts getting it. And it starts this back and forth. And for an hour, everybody's gone. Like, we've asked the directors to leave. It's just us, because we had to be in a mutual agreement. They were kind of like, whatever you two pick. And then we finally are just so creatively cohesive. This is the house, right? We realize that this is the house. This came from a disaster. And when I say, like, nobody can understand that unless you're on that scout and you realize, like, Tech Scout now, where the whole crew is sitting around, producers are fuming with me because they're like, oh, all of a sudden you want to sit in a house for an hour? And I'm like, guys, we have to feel this. We have to understand. I have to be on the same page with our production designer to make this special, right? And then, so we bring the directors in, and Andy walks in and he goes, I just realized is that my actor, who is actually blind, would have been running into everything in that other house, and it would have been a disaster for us. Mm-hmm. And he goes, this is the perfect house. And this is before we said, hey, like, we're on the same page here. He just walked in and he was like, I can't believe that I didn't see this, but that young man would be walking into walls and tripping over stands. And it would have been because of the amount of work that we would have had to do to manipulate that place. So that to say, example of where things go really wrong. But the beauty of it is the problem solving. And then the beauty of it is when you problem solve together. And then that sparked because I saw an organ that I grew up playing with, and she did too. And that was like the moment. And that was like 45 minutes into sitting almost silent, because I won't say she was mad at me, because she's too sweet to ever be mad at me. Frustrated because I just threw a massive wrench into her plans. And we had gone to other houses and they weren't working. And this finally, she's just sitting there like, oh, is this going to work? And then we just met on this little thing. And it was really beautiful. And I love that moment that we both looked at the organ like, yeah, this is it. This is the thing this is what's going to bring us together. And that house turned out to be fantastic.
And that turned out for the best. That's amazing.
And
That's
we
a great
shot
story.
So much in there.
Yeah,
in
I bet you got to take full advantage of that once you discover it and find it.
Yeah.
That's so great. Kris, I have absolutely enjoyed this conversation immensely.
Likewise.
And I wish we could go even deeper into the other projects and future things that you have going on. I have 2 final questions for you.
Go for it.
Number 1 is, where can our filmmakers go to find out more about you, your work, and what you're doing?
Very easily. Like, I think I'm most active. I'm not really into a bunch of different social medias, but most active on Instagram at Kris Kimlin. I have kriskimlindp.com and I have kriskimlin.com. It's kind of old there, but if you really want to know where my heart's at and what I'm doing, and you want to see my family and you want to see like the things that I do on a daily basis and my photography, which I do a lot of, that's all there on that Instagram. There's another photography based Instagram, but you'll get there through my Instagram. So just at Kris Kimlin, and that's probably the best way. And I answer messages. I love getting messages from people. I love interacting with.
That's how we got connected, and I appreciate that. I think that just goes to show how much you care about the filmmaking community and just interacting and continuing to build relationships with other filmmakers. So that's amazing. Filmmakers, I will make sure to have all of the links in the show notes. So please go ahead, check out, give Kris some love, as he has shared so much insight with you on this podcast. Last final question for you, Kris, and this one's a doozy.
Yeah.
What is your deserted island movie? So if you could only watch one film for the rest of your life, what would it be?
E.T.
I knew it from the beginning of our conversation.
Where it would end, man. It's just
we've come full circle.
That movie just did so many things for me. And then I just remember the moment was when my grandmother loved giving me stuffed animals. And so I literally had a closet at her house full of stuffed animals. And remember when Elliot's mother opens the closet, and in the closet are all the stuffed animals, ET's right there.
Right.
I remember being a kid going, man, that could be me. That and if you go back my history and my dad, I never knew my dad until I was 21, and like very odd, like crazy similarities, being raised by a single mom. There's a lot of stuff in there that I think mattered. Like, it was just feeding into me as a kid and I didn't know it, like in that genius Spielberg way. But when she opens that closet, I go, man, maybe I could have my own alien in my closet, like my own friend, my own ET in my closet. And I remember just setting them up, right? And just thinking, man, this is like straight out of ET. And I knew every single word of that movie, man. I recited my grandmother, God rest her soul, is a saint in heaven because she had to sit to me. I would narrate the scene and then act it out in front of her. And it was like I'd never done it before, every single time. And it was beautiful. That's where storytelling started for me, was watching. That was my first audience member, and it was awesome. The power of grandparents, man. There's something about that. Yeah.
That's great. Well, Kris, thank you so much again for your time, your knowledge. I really appreciate you being on the Filmmaker Secrets podcast.
If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write, shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.